Agenda, I would like to begin by acknowledging we are in the Mi'kmaq in the district of Spaganagity, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. First thing I'll be looking for is the approval of the agenda of all subcommittees. We have a seconder? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Oh, no, hold it. Keith is on there. 1 second. Councillor Rhino.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to have added a discussion somewhere around COVID-19, the protocols, please. I'll leave it to the CAO to see if that should be in camera or left in an open forum.
Okay, we will add that then at the end, an in-camera session at the end. That would become the open. Okay, we'll be open. We'll add it at the end of the agenda today, Councillor.
Thank you.
Is everybody in agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'll be looking for the approval of the minutes of September 21st, 2021. Moved by the warden, seconded by Deputy Warden Mitchell. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. New employee introductions. Krista Nelson, Administrative Services Clerk. Who's going to take that? Oh, wait, Sue.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm very happy to introduce Krista Nelson. She's right there in the back with us. She started yesterday. She has several years of administrative support experience and also customer service. She is now filling in at the front desk, so she'll be our public-facing person. And she also has a certificate, diploma from NSCC in office administration, and she's also local. She's from South Rawdon. So I am very happy to introduce her and welcome her, and I ask that everybody welcome her. Thank you. Thanks.
And we have a nursery Banerjee, planner for 12-month term. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Anushree Banerjee is our new planner with us for a 12-month term. There she is. She's a relatively new person to the profession, a graduate from Dalhousie. She's also done some work with HRM and has an earlier degree from India. So we're looking forward to having her for the next year.
Welcome. Next up, we have Dr. David Sheehy, Amendments to Policies and Regulations for High Flood Zone Properties. Final report, and Rachel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the application was received in March of this year, and the applicant has operated the Shubenacadie Health Centre since 1993. And you can see the building down there in the left corner of the presentation, and then there's the aerial photography that outlines the site in red. He has been trying to attract another physician to the clinic, but has been unsuccessful. The property was changed to a medical clinic following a development agreement with the municipality in 1993. So as you can see from the zoning map, the site is located in the high-risk floodplain. To the west of the property is an Anglican church, and then to the east is an existing residential and commercial building operating as Papa K's Pizza, and then there's an existing residential use to the rear. So the purpose of the application is to enable the property owner to convert the building to a single unit dwelling so that he can sell it on. It was previously a single unit dwelling before it became the medical centre building. So the property is located in the high-risk floodplain where no permanent structures are permitted except for public work structures associated with the provision of pipe services, or unless the structure is accessory to the lawfully existing main use on the property. So change to residential is not permitted in the zone from the existing use. So it's not enabled under the existing policies and regulations of the official community plan. So the applicant is requesting a change to our to the MPS and LUB to enable him to change the property over from medical centre to residential use. The existing development agreements on the property, which will enable the medical practice use, will also need to be discharged to allow this to happen. So regulations to limit the development in a high-risk floodplain are intended to protect property owners, but also to enable the lands to function as an area where floodwaters can flow freely. Once the land use or buildings are no longer in operation, there is an opportunity to remove the use and potentially the building from the area. This does, however, have an impact on existing property owners and creates a potential hardship. A non-conforming use in a high-risk floodplain zone is different to other zones, as there is no opportunity to use the building for any other use. However, other zones where you have, excuse me, other non-conforming uses, you can change them to other uses within that zone. And then when we look at proposals for new uses in Shubenacadie, we'll do an assessment of whether there's wastewater capacity for that until the new building is constructed. So 22 property owners throughout the whole of the HF zoned area, which are currently not in residential use. And the amendments also consider other non-conforming uses. So the amendments look at allowing a non-conforming use to a non-conforming single unit dwelling as of right. So they could come in and apply for a permit for that as of right. But other non-conforming uses to change over would be required to be considered by development agreement, and that will allow council to consider the impacts of that application. And the bullet points there in the presentation just outline the points that council can consider when looking at that development agreement application. So citizen engagement, public information meeting was held on July 6th, and there were no comments or questions from the public. Following first reading, questionnaires were mailed to property owners within 300 metres of the application property. And we also did some posts on social media to encourage other people to comment on the application. Questionnaires were returned from 11 property owners and there were no objections. However, there were a couple of comments. One property owner said that the Nova Scotia government is seeking to bring in new doctors and that Dr. Sheehy might be able to find someone to take over the medical centre. The amendments don't stop Dr. Sheehy from selling it as a medical practice. Once the development agreement is discharged, he would still have 2 years to use it as a medical practice if he decides to. But in reaching out to Dr. Sheehy, he thinks that the chance of getting someone to take over that building is nil. There is another property owner who doesn't want to see multi-unit residential in the area. That was more of a general comment about the area and not specifically related to this application. So planning staff has completed their review of the application and we're at the staff final evaluation stage, and the public hearing has been scheduled for next week. So the recommendation is approval be given to the MPS and LUB amendments and approval be given to the discharge of the development agreements. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Seeing no one up, we have someone to move the motion. Councillor Perry,
I'll move the recommended motion.
seconded by Councillor Reiner. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor? No? Okay, we have that in. Looking for the question? Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion has passed unanimously. 6, 7, 8. Now we get back to this. Next up, we have Angela and Greg Burke, request for self-storage in a mixed-use center, MC zone. The initial report, once again, Rachel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the application property is outlined on the zoning map to the right of the presentation. It's located in the mixed-use centre, and the rear property boundary abuts the CN rail line. There are 2 existing buildings on the property, and the applicant is planning to replace the smaller building at a later date during phase 2 of their plans. There are currently 5 commercial tenants on the property. I just wanted to highlight that there is some high-risk floodplain and moderate-risk floodplain on the property. You can see just down here, very thin sliver down here, and this is the moderate-risk floodplain, is hatched on the zoning map. So the purpose of the application is to enable the new self-storage buildings on the rear portion of the property, which are currently not permitted in the mixed-use centre zone. The applicant has indicated that they're also considering the mixed-use building, which is this building, to be replaced with a new mixed-use building. Staff have not evaluated whether the mixed-use building meets the MZ zone regulations, but on a very quick analysis, it looks like there will be some needs, some changes to that building to comply with the mixed-use zone. But there's been no thorough analysis of that. So this is the site plan. As you can see, this building here is the new building that the applicants are proposing to replace the existing one. We have this existing building here, which has a number of commercial tenants. And this area to the rear here is where the self-storage buildings are proposed. We'll need to check where the high-risk floodplain is located on the property, but I believe that this building here will be located in the high-risk floodplain, so it will need to be amended to take that out of that zone. And then an analysis has not been made on the application at this point. It's just presenting the plan as submitted. The mixed-use centre designation zone purpose is to allow for a diverse mixture of medium-density commercial businesses and residential uses in an environment serving both pedestrian and vehicle needs with an aesthetically pleasing, socially interactive streetscape. Self-storage uses do not fit within the intent of the mixed-use centre designation zone, and they're a use which is not aesthetically pleasing and does not create a socially interactive streetscape. They're a use which does not meet the goal of fostering a consistent, walkable, medium-scale growth pattern. And based on this, staff have concerns about introducing new self-storage facilities into the mixed-use centre designation zone. Staff do, however, acknowledge that the use will not front onto Highway 2 as it's located to the rear half of the property, and this still enables the property to have a socially interactive streetscape. The area of land proposed for the self-storage is located along the CN rail line, which would not be as ideal for any residential or mixed-use units. So there is an opportunity to enable the development, which staff consider not compatible with the MC designation zone, without compromising the ability of the property to have an MC-compatible use fronting onto Highway 2. And just going back to that, the site plan there, this really is just acknowledging that this is a very deep lot, so we can still have the self-storage buildings in the back, but still maintaining this up front, which will allow for mixed-use buildings along Highway number 2. So there is an option to redesignate and rezone the rear portion of the property to highway commercial, but staff would not recommend this. This provides no control over the type of use or development and its compatibility with the surrounding mixed-use properties, mixed-use centre properties. So there are some uses in that highway commercial use which may not be compatible there. So just on quick analysis, there are dog daycares are permitted in the highway commercial, and there is potential that could have an impact on surrounding mixed-use buildings. So that's why staff are recommending that we enable this type of development through a development agreement. And this would allow council to consider this, the specifics of the proposal. So staff would support this approach with the following policies. To enable the goal intent of the mixed-use centre designation zone to be realised, the front portion of properties on Highway 2 be maintained for mixed-use centre zone uses. That the ability to consider highway commercial zone uses only be considered for properties which back onto the CN rail line, and for the back portion of these properties only. So what that means is that properties on the other side of Highway 2 would not be covered by this policy, as they don't they don't have a property boundary onto the CN rail line. So it would really only impact properties along this side of Highway number 2. Policies be developed to enable PAC and council to review the compatibility of the zone, HC zone uses proposed to be considered in the context of existing uses in the area. So that's where I was mentioning some uses that may not be compatible that are allowed in the HC zone. And then to be considered for a development agreement. And this allows staff, PAC and council to consider the details of the proposal. The terms of the details of the development can be agreed between the developer and council. And this provides certainty to the community as what will be developed on the property. And then the self-storage use is not permitted as of right in the highway commercial zone. So the policies and regulations of the mixed-use centre zone, which may be developed, should include self-storage as one of the uses which can be considered. And what this means is that currently under the highway commercial zone, there's a list of uses which are permitted as of right, and self-storage is one of those uses which is considered through development agreement. So the policies will need to make it clear that if a development agreement was to come forward for the mixed-use centre zone, that it allows those as of right uses, but also uses which are identified as development agreement in that highway commercial zone. So just in a quick analysis of properties on highway number 2, which could be considered for this type of policy, staff have outlined this in yellow. So we'll do an analysis of what makes sense in terms of keeping the mixed-use centre zone up front. And some of these properties down here may not be deep enough, but we'll make a recommendation on what that depth should be to maintain that mixed-use centre zone uses up front. But it does just show an analysis of the properties which could be subject to the policies. And the areas here which are in white, these are the floodplain zones. They weren't added to this map just to kind of make it clearer for viewing. Public information meeting is required as MPS amendments are proposed. COVID-19 restrictions have now been lifted on gathering limits and physical distancing. So the only limits on the number of attendees is the room occupant load. Attendees right now would have to wear masks, and staff believe that they would be required to show their proof of vaccine. The advantage of holding the meeting virtually is that people who are not vaccinated will be able to participate, and the disadvantage is that it can be more difficult for members of the public who don't have internet, who are not able to use a digital platform. However, in both cases, staff are still available to answer questions if any of those members of the public wanted to reach out to staff directly. So staff need direction on whether to continue to hold the PIM as a virtual meeting through Zoom or whether to organise an in-person meeting. To enable the applicant to continue with their proposal, amendments are required to the MPS and LUB, and if approved, these amendments would apply to other properties in the mixed-use centre zone. And a public information meeting is proposed as the next step in the process. So here we are, initial report, and if this is approved to go to public information meeting, this would be the next step. So the recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee recommend that Council authorise staff to schedule a public information meeting, and also whether to hold the PIM as an in-person meeting or virtually through Zoom. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Any discussion? Deputy Warden Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to go back, Rachel, to the question about other properties that are in that type of zoning, would they be able to have a separate development agreement for each property?
Through Mr. Chair, yes. If those amendments come in, that then all of the properties onto the CN rail line that have enough depth would be able to submit their own development agreement.
Thank you. I'll move the recommended motion.
I'll second. Move now, is that for in-person or Zoom meeting?
That question, I'm not sure, depending on public health, but I would go with in-person if we could. Thank you.
Deputy Warden, do we have a seconder? Moved by Councilor Knockwood. Would you speak again, Deputy Warden?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
For that, any more discussion? Looking for the question on the motion? Question call, go to the vote. The motion is passed unanimously. Next item. Beamish Road, plan update background paper, Debbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as part of the ongoing plan update, planning staff presented a background report on Beamish Road to our planning advisory committee at their May 2021 meeting. So as a result of that meeting, council passed motion C-21-169, directing staff to contact the 17 identified property owners on the south end of Beamish Road about the proposed rezoning. And this supplemental report will outline the results of the Beamish Road rezoning survey. So, as I mentioned, planning staff prepared questionnaires for the residents located along the south end of Beamish Road who are initially interested in having their property zoning changed from the rural use zone. So the questionnaire that went out asked, as per council motion, if the property owners wanted to maintain the rural use zone, wanted to go to country residential, or wanted to go to the R1. So the packages that went out to every property owner was the questionnaire, a letter, return envelope, and information about each of those zones, what you could do in each of those zones. So a total of 17 questionnaires were mailed. 3 property owners responded. All 3 of the property owners who responded to the questionnaire indicated that the south end of Beamish Road should be zoned country residential CR zone to best suit the land use requirements of this section of Beamish Road. There are 14 property owners Beamish Road who did not respond to the survey. Planning staff recommend the council take a consistent approach to the zoning of these 17 properties. Only rezoning the 3 property owners who responded to the survey to country residential zone does not actually protect these 3 property owners from the rural use, land use zone uses on the adjacent property. So that's what initiated this, is that the person with the rural use zone wanted to have RV storage facility on the property. The more restrictive zoning on one lot does not apply to the neighboring properties, which in turn does not limit the land use conflicts. Therefore, all of the identified properties should have a consistent zoning and no spot zoning should be implemented. So again, these are the 17 properties that where the survey went out, and the 3 that are highlighted here are the ones that actually responded to the questionnaire. So based on just the fact that we've received 3 responses, our results are inconclusive. And just looking at the land uses on the southern portion of Beamish Road, planning staff recommend that the land use designation and zone be changed to country residential. They're all homes appearing to be single unit dwellings, and there is one that has a commercial or business in it. But other than that, they're all single unit dwellings. Alternatively, Planning Advisory Committee may choose to recommend to council that the current rural use RU land use designation zone be maintained. And both of these zones do allow for residential uses. The rural use zone allows for a variety of dwelling types. So if it was maintained, it allows for many homes, semi-detached. It also permits commercial uses that are rural in nature. So such as fabrication, farm and forestry equipment. It allows for horse uses. It allows for retail uses, veterinarians' offices, those types of things. The country residential zone is a more restrictive zone and only permits single unit dwellings while also allowing for accessory dwelling units and home-based businesses. So the 2 options are to either move forward with changing the designation and zone of the subject lands to country residential CR as part of the plan update, or to maintain the current rural use RU land use designation and zone. So just in conclusion, as per the direction of council, planning staff have provided questionnaires to 17 identified properties on the south end of Beamish Road, of which only 3 property owners responded. 2 options have been provided to Planning Advisory Committee for their consideration, and staff recommend that all 17 properties have the same zoning to provide a consistent approach to regulating land uses on this section of Beamish Road, and that the land use designation as shown be changed to country residential. And again, the recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee recommended council authorize staff to change land use designation and zone of the subject lands to country residential as part of the plan update. And notification to property owners would be part of that plan update process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Debbie, thank you for the report and the hard work that went into this. I know it's not always easy to get responses back. However, I feel that we can't move forward to rezone anything because our current policy for our paving petitions is if you do not return your questionnaire, it is a no. So here we can't really say if they didn't return it that it should be a yes either. Also, out of the 3 people that responded, one of them currently has their house up for sale. So realistically, there's only 2 people that are invested long-term into this. And without the 17 people or the rest of them responding, I think to avoid situations that we've had multiple times in rezoned areas where people never asked for it on their properties, I think we should just leave it as the current use. So I'm going to move the alternative motion and maintain the current rural use land designation zone on the subject lands.
Move, we have a seconded by Councilor Head. Is that all, Councilor Perry?
Yes, thank you.
Warden Wilson, we're on the board motion.
I would concur with Counselor Perry, but when we do a plan review, certainly, you know, the opportunity could be made for folks on Beamish Road if we make a note, give them a second kick at the can, I guess, and if the majority come forward and say, yes, we'd like to go country residential, we could certainly include it at that time, but I do kind of share his concern that the 14 people who didn't respond, you know, they probably were happy with the way things were and didn't feel they needed to do anything. And so, you know, I guess maybe in future, if we could say something like when the correspondence goes out, that, you know, if we do not receive a response from this, we will assume that, you know, you're either pro or con, whatever we decide, so that they clearly would know if they didn't respond that a change might happen. But those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Seeing no one else, be looking for the question. Pardon? Kim? Debbie, okay, 1 second, Debbie.
To Mr. Chair, we don't have a policy on our questionnaires whether a no response is me, or whether a lack of response is a no response, like we do with the paving petitions. So we don't have that in policy anywhere. It's just to let Planning Advisory Committee know.
Okay, thank you. You're looking for the question? Question's been called. Go to the vote. And somebody's still there. Everybody's in. The motion is passed unanimously. That concludes this portion of the meeting. I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. We all in favor? All right, and we are scheduled for a 15-minute break at the end of this session. Is that something you want, or do you want to move right into infrastructure? Okay.
Okay, we're gonna call the Infrastructure and Operation Committee to order. The first item is the approval of the minute of July 2021. Move in second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passed. Okay, our first item is speed awareness community signage with Jesse.
Perfect. There we go. So this report is coming to executive upon direction of council to have a staff report research potential signage options. It was originally worded as a generic speed signage for Weir Road in Walton. Staff took in feedback both during that minutes from council and some discussions with individual councillors before and after the meeting, and concluded the real need is a discussion of generic signage options in a broader way. And so that's the framing of the report itself. So I'm not going to read the report verbatim this time. What I'm going to talk about is the financial options of a generic sign. So apart from a standalone signage, staff believe that a short-term quick response option is a viable option for community members that are looking for quick action. In a lot of things that we do as a municipality require technical reports, analysis, large capital dollars. That doesn't meet the needs for folks that just experienced something in their neighborhood, whether that's a race down the street or something event. There's nothing that we are technically able to do to respond quickly to those events. So what is been looked at is benchmarks from other communities of what's happened of temporary signage. An example is shown here. This was borrowed from, for those all watching on YouTube, this was borrowed from an adjacent municipality with permission from the property owner that had this sign on their yard, which was me. And it gives the example. So you post it, it shows a sense of community, it builds awareness that folks are noticing speed in their own neighborhood, they're concerned about it, and so it's a neighborly check-in visual. That is the opportunity. What we're proposing as staff is a bit different on the distribution and the type of signage, where we have part-time counselors, we have a broad geographic location. We don't have a setup similar to how an HRM executes these signs or MLAs execute these signs. What they do, they have specific staff tied to each elected official who are coordinating their own signs in their own district. As you can see on this benchmark, this is for one specific community. It's not for a broader area. From an East Hants perspective, what is being pitched as a preferred option is a generic East Hants sign, as seen above on the screen, that provides us more options. From bulk ordering, we order one type of sign, we're able to distribute it to anywhere in the municipality, and we can keep it a stock. It's easier to manage a supply. So that is the pitch and the perspective on what we believe is the immediate need. We're not getting into the discussion of designing speed out in this report. That I mentioned it within the report. That's a separate report. That's a bigger topic. We can go there, but I would suggest that would be a recommendation for another day. On these signs alone, what we believe is the best option is to purchase a bulk volume. Residents that inquire can come in and pick them up at the front desk upon letting us know they're coming to get one, or they can be available if someone knows a neighbor and counselors come in. You could absolutely grab one and say, hey, deliver it on the way back from an executive meeting or council. Those kind of two entry-level options of distribution while we learn what is the demand, what is the interest from our community, without it being too complex for the time being. That is what's being recommended for staff. The cost, we're anticipating about $5,000. We would start it up for next fiscal. It wouldn't, right now it's just the timing we got to, by the time we order signs, if it was even next week on lead time, the snow will have flown by the time we have a supply, but we would have something available for the spring is realistic. So we could have something in the budget. They're not cheap. To be honest, on benchmarks, we're anticipating between $20 and $25 per sign. But compared to a speed hump, so putting in a speed hump in a neighborhood, just one speed hump in one neighborhood is going to cost $5,000 or more potentially. So we're saying, okay, in lieu of that, in lieu of doing studies, in lieu of doing that, a quick response, a reasonable spend could be an initial spend of $5,000 for next fiscal. We would do it in a way that we'd order an initial batch. It would be about $3,500, and then we'd see where we are on demand, and then order more based on smaller numbers. Not knowing what the uptake will be, not knowing what the interest will be, and go from there. So the recommendation is to purchase 150 lawn-mounted signs with the design shown in this report for the available use for East Hants residents, and to budget an additional order of 50 later on for the following fiscal. And the recommended motion is as on screen. And I'll open the floor to questions and comments on the proposed signage.
Thank you, Jesse. I have Christmas tree here, so be ready.
It's all
Okay,
good.
Councilor Rhino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I take issue with the part-time counselors. We are full-time counselors that have other vocations. And I'd like in future that may be addressed that way instead of part-time counselors. Second of all, signs. Just not too many years ago, we created a signing policy to eliminate signs from sides of roadways on so on and so forth. Now if this motion passes, we may be seen by some as promoting signage. Now, there's different reasons, the advertising and then our children, I understand that. But just to bring that up, we may be seen as now promoting. So we're kind of putting ourselves in somebody's eyes by saying, okay, you created a policy, now you're promoting sign. But if this motion passes, how do we tend to police this? Because I can see these creeping out to the edges of the road. Are we going to give some kind of direction of where they can be placed on the highway? Anything along that, can you help me out there? Because if not, then maybe we should be looking at these type of signs, asking the Department of Public Works to install these on Telespar and so on along the road. But if it is the intent to only be on the lawn, would there be instruction sheet or something go out to make sure that kind of police that to they stay on the lawn and not on the edges of the road? How do we address that?
Okay. Through Mr. Chair. First off, I apologize that on the part-time piece, it was a view of when you deal with engineers, we're dealing with logistics. So in my mind, I'm talking about the logistics of availability during the daytime, where we have many counselors with full-time professions on top of the responsibilities. It wasn't meant as a slight at all. So duly noted. The on the yard piece is going to be an explanation in the governance. These signs are intended to be on private property, not within the road right of way. So they're not official traffic signs. They're yard signs that really become the ownership of the property owner. We're giving signs to an individual to use on their property. From a governance side, it would be just feedback. If it crept out to the road, we'd contact someone to pull back, and upon delivering them out, we'd have some verbiage on our rollout on this is best practice of how to use them. So we would address that way, keeping it separate from official traffic signage. It's a separate program. This isn't intended to replace speed signs. It's not to replace official designed technical signage.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, so then the verbiage, there will be some kind of verbiage going out with that specifying best practices and where to put, and best locations of one needs to, where to put. I guess that was my concern, because if we were gonna, and how is it gonna be policed? I guess you said that you would take it on a case-by-case basis if there is, and won't, but, that would be my concern, that everybody would start creeping out, and then that would lead into another avenue down the road. But as far, I like the idea in general, as far as, you know, things, it's kind of a novel idea of what we can do in the interim. Anyway, and I do accept your apology on that, but I just want to make clarification. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. I like the idea. I like the generic signs that, you know, then we don't have specific names on them. They're good between elections, whatever happens, and they're good everywhere. The downside is that these would be on private property. So if you live on a provincial road, the sign's going to be so far off the road that the people who are speeding by going too fast won't see them. So, you know, there is a problem there. I would foresee that a lot of people in the rural areas would probably put them, if they still have mailboxes, on their mailbox posts, which would technically not be permitted. So I don't know if there's any way around that or not. I'm certainly prepared to try it. I don't know if there could be any dialogue with, let's see, it's not TAT anymore, it's not DOT.
Public Works.
Public Works, yes. If there could be any dialogue with them, you know, to say what would be involved, and it might be too much to even bother with, but some dialogue with them to see what would be involved to allow them, you know, perhaps on a pre-existing post where your mailbox or your paper tube or whatever is, even if it is technically within the road right of way. I think it's a good idea. I would rather not wait until next fiscal. It's not a lot of money. I'm sure we can find it somewhere. I would like to have them made available as soon as possible. We don't know what the winter is going to be like. There might not be any frost in the ground by Christmas. And folks who, I've had concerns actually in Councillor Green's district, in the area where my cottage is. I've had concerns from people saying, isn't there some kind of signage we could get so that people will slow down going in this road? So, yeah, I think if we make it available and the individual people who are going to commit to putting them up under whatever regulation we have could, you know, put them up when they felt it was necessary. So, like I said, I like the design. I like the generic sign, and I've already made the other comments. I mean, certainly I would agree for the time being, they would have to be on private property, but I would like to see us at least investigate what might or might not be allowed. And I'm not saying it should be a free-for-all and people could stick them on the shoulder of the road in front of their house, but I guess those are my comments. And like I said, particularly in the rural areas, if you get back too far behind the ditches, the people that need to see them won't see them. So, thank you.
Is that all, Warden?
That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have next Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to echo the warden, yeah, the people in the rural area, when people drive by, they're driving too fast to see them if they're too far back on the road, and they're the ones that need to slow down. One of the questions I have is, I think that rolling this out is a great idea sooner than later. But one of the questions, has anybody contacted the MLAs to see if they're doing a rollout of these signs like the previous government did? It's just duplication of effort, or maybe there can be some form of collaboration there, because I know currently in my district, there's at least 40 signs from the previous MLA plastered everywhere. And that makes me question whether 150 is a number that we need up front. There might be, the demand might be even greater. It's funny, once people know they can get something for free, it tends to be, something that they want, especially something dealing with children. The other thing with it, as far as procurement goes, I know there are multiple places within East Hants that can do signs and local businesses. It'd be great, if part of the procurement policy that we look and go through them as well. Because I know every councillor here, we get election signs printed, and these are they're identical to what an election sign is. And 150 should not cost $3,000. That's something I can tell you right now. But I also am happy to hear that we're gonna have a discussion later on other traffic calming measures. There's been a lot of conversation and a lot of dialogue in my district about exactly speed humps cost and the difficulties with roads being half provincially owned, half municipal owned, and things like that. So I'm glad that conversation is going to come forward, and we can have that in the future to try and look at traffic calming measures in areas where there's excess speeding going on. And that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Next, we have Councillor Knockwood.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I don't know, I'm just thinking like, is the RCMP notified of speeders in areas that it comes to this, we got to put signs up?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do talk to this a bit in the report. The challenge RCMP have is they typically find out after the fact, and they can't patrol everywhere at once. We've got a limited number of officers, and so for our public, the feedback that we're interpreting is that we're getting, there's a need or a want for a quick response, and the RCMP can't commit to a quick response for all types of calls. They get priority based on severity of what's happening across East Hants. It's hard for them to set up traffic stops in Knoll, Shuby, Walton all at the same time. It's geographically challenging. So they are the enforcement. This is different. This is an option for community advocacy and awareness. So the RCMP are the heavy hand that if they can catch someone, can enforce something. What the signs are different in that it's advocacy and frontward facing promotion to let the community, if they want a sign up and feel strongly about it, they can get one. They want to say, hey, there's an issue in our neighborhood, it's visible. So not everyone's comfortable walking over to their neighbor and confronting them over their speed, but they were probably a lot more comfortable putting a sign up because they care about it. So that's really the intent of these signs, apart from the enforcement, which gets into that broader enforcement designing conversations, which is more complex and challenging.
But I'm thinking about these signs, community watch, they're on poles and all that stuff. I think we should talk to the province and kind of make a joint effort to help put them aside the road so people can see them, like I said, we're talking about people putting way back on their lawn, people can't see them anyway, so that's an issue, so we gotta come up with a solution here. Like, I had to, once in a while you see them on the police report, how much traffic people have been stopped and all that. Won't we just put the complaints if they're going down in Shubenacadie, for example, and see how much speeding tickets they're handing out. They do match up and see how serious they are taking it, you know. And like in Shubenacadie, they say we love our children, you know. Extension on a sidewalk from the church to the school. At least the kids ain't walking close to the roadside. You know, looking at safety issues. You know, we got to look at it. Like even more sidewalks that would have to be put in place. But I think it's a good idea. I agree with you, Jesse. But there's other solutions we should come up with more. You know, if somebody takes somebody's sign, you know, or blow up, we all have election signs. We got that flimsy little metal thing breaks. You know, even you put it in wrong, right? And they get all warped up. And I think it'd be better base. On that sign could be looked at, you know, maybe the plastic ones or whatever. But I don't know. I just think the speeding, I agree. You know, people are really going fast. I think it's a money issue myself, but, you know, like Crime Stoppers or community watch groups and all that. I don't know. It would help anyways, I would imagine, but I think we should compare the numbers with the RCMP with complaints and the tickets, see. And also, now, would Indianbrook, would you be able to get any signs like this?
I don't know. The question is, would Indianbrook, the community of Indianbrook, be eligible for signs as well? Sure.
Okay. That's wondering. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I apologize. Timed out on me. There we go.
Anybody have an answer for about Indianbrook? I don't hear the answers. Oh, they have. Okay, thank you. Is that all, Councilor Knuckle?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Okay, Councilor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things on this. As a motorist, I find these signs very noticeable no matter where I'm driving, if I see them, it definitely registers with me. So I think they're a good thing in that way. I've had recent experience using these signs last year during the election, and they do have their challenges for sure. But definitely a quick response, which I think residents would appreciate, because some of the other responses that we are looking at are not immediate. So in saying that, I do definitely concur that I would like to see them come out sooner rather than later. I know how quickly I pulled my signs together, and as well, the more signs you get, the cheaper they are per sign, for sure. So I'd like to see them going out as quick as, if we can find that money, getting them out there as quick as we can. I think the residents would be pleased about that. Maybe look at having an allotment for the different districts, so that, you don't get 50% of the signs all ending up to, one subdivision who happen to be on board quicker than the others and use up all the signs, something along that lines. I would like to see the verse above the East Hants municipality logo, that be on the bottom instead of on the top. That's just something that visually I would like to see, just a little detail. But I definitely am hoping that we can address these speeding issues on a more concrete level ASAP. But this is definitely a good start, and I think residents would be pleased. However we can erect them, whether it be on people's lawns, and depending on if it's in a subdivision or on a main road, subdivisions lawns go right down to the road, so I don't see it being a problem. And I think I would like to think people would be fairly cooperative if given a few details on where to put them or how to put them, that they would follow those for the best end result. But I'm definitely in favor of the idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some comments and observations. Election signs are usually corrugated plastic, and I don't think that is. That's a little heavier material, I believe, do it, Jesse, yeah.
But,
Any,
but yes, they're mostly plastic based.
yeah, but they're a little more stringent compared to the election signs that,
Yep.
Yeah.
These, through you, Mr. Chair, these will hold up a lot
I would-
longer.
Yeah, that would be what I would be looking for. Cost perspective, there are some areas you may not need it on both sides. You could just have your printing on one side, traffic going in, and when you're coming back out, you're already at the end of the subdivision, so there's no need to have that on the other side. There might be a cost saving there. And since they're going on private property, I think a big deterrent and a big visual effect, all our school crossing signs are yellow. And if we had those signs yellow, putting on private property, please drive slowly, we love our children. When people see that color of a sign, that automatically would respond to, hey, that's the same as a school zone sign. Not saying the school zone's speeds would be the same, but it would make them more proactive to say that sign is yellow. That means slow down for our children. I don't know whether that's ever possible, and there would certainly probably be another cost to the sign too, but for the ones that are off the road far enough that you can't really see them, that sign would really show up, and it would send a message that, slow down for our children. So just my observations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
I just had a question. Are these signs double-sided, or is that two signs?
Through you, Mr. Chair, these signs are double-sided. This is one sign, double-sided. And to talk to a bit of, from a staff perspective, we talked about the pros and cons of cost and one-sided versus two-sided. The intent is to get this messaging out, and if you offer a signage with one sign, then people may ask for these signs and use the other side for other purposes. Say, hey, look, we got a free stock of material. We can put our own sign on the other side and leverage it. So, which isn't the intent. So we would have to, from an organizational sense, we'd have to think about that on what's the purpose, what are we trying to do, and is the cost to mitigate those other risks worth the cost per sign? So it's just a discussion. I don't have the solution to that. That's what we discussed at the staff level.
Thank you. So I would agree probably going with the double-sided, and that could be also adding a bit to the cost of them along with the heavier material. Regarding how you install them, of course, my election signs are pretty old. They've been around for a long time. Yeah. And they're the corrugated plastic. And they don't have those little metal things that the newer ones have. And I always bought wooden stakes and fastened to mine and drove them in the ground with them all. Mine are pretty old. They've lasted not too bad. The other thing I would say regarding the color, I understand that the yellow would be eye-catching. I would agree with that, but maybe it's because I have old eyes now. I don't know. I find it easier to read the black on white contrasting sign. The sign might catch my eye better if it was yellow, but to see what it says as I'm doing a drive-by, the black on white does it for me. And I drove around, I saw a lot of signs during the recent elections and that stood true. you know, the signs with the various colored backgrounds were not, for me at least, as easy to read as the black on white. So I just make that comment, but whichever way we go. And I would, after hearing Councillor Garden Cole, I would concur if we put the message at the top of the sign and then we put East Hants on the bottom. I think that would be appropriate too, because then the first thing you're going to see is what we want people to do, and then we'll see, you know, okay, this is in East Hants, suggesting this. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Next, we have Councillor Eisner.
Thank you. Through you, I'm speaking now. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to see a more permanent sign. I just feel that these are going to go. Department of Highways has enough challenges with just mowing along the sides of the back roads and plowing snow. Just like to see it more permanent, like with the stop signs and whatnot. Maybe tied in with the Canada Post. These mailboxes all have a area you probably put it on real easy and it would stay there better. Anyways, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's, I think, exactly what we talked about, Jesse, that sign. This was brought forward by a complaint from a resident on Weir Road. That, for those that don't know it, that's a short road that would probably be maybe the length of the driveway into the parking lot in Walton. But it happens to loop down onto the Lauren Armstrong Road. It does, or Lauren Smith Road, which is the main road into the lighthouse. And this was brought forth more by GPS complaints because the tourists would be on the Weir Road. And of course, once they hit the road, they don't know it's a short road like everyone else. And the lady there has grandchildren that are there quite often playing. The houses on the Weir Road are like right here. And that's what drove this. This is exactly what I was looking for. I'm sure you'll see some along like the 354 and the 215, but my idea of them was for side roads, subdivisions where we have the bulk of the complaints, as I'm sure in Councillor Garden Cole's area. I read all the time, you know, like the speeds in there on the road, and the same I would think in the subdivisions in Mount Uniacke. But I said there are quite a few small roads in Walton, and there are people going in the road to Elner's Cottage. It is like, this is what I'm looking for. It is very well done, Jesse.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Okay, we go back to Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add to that, so they go into the ground, and especially if we were to get them sooner rather than later, they'll cut off. They'll go into the ground pretty nicely before the frost sets in, and I think that will make them in pretty good shape for going through the colder weather. And I mean, the snow lately has been disappointing, so I think they could be up, for me anyway. They could be up through the winter. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I want to pass the chair to the warden. Jesse, how many roads roughly, roads we have in East Hants? I just wonder if the number is enough. Like, I think 150 is not going to do it.
Through Mr. Chair, the estimate on cost is a rough cost and the numbers. And so we were looking at $5,000. We were doing 3 costs. We didn't do localized pricing. We didn't benchmark. We just benchmark campaign sign costs. What we did was we looked for signage costs online for online ordering, 3 different vendors, and that gave us an idea. So I guess it gets more into how much do you want to spend, and we get as many signs as possible for that amount is really where our head would be. And so the $5,000 recommended was that'll get us about this, and if we can get more out of it, awesome, we'll do that. And if the demand's there, we distribute them. It's about, we don't know what we don't know at this time, and this is an early attempt at this topic. It's a first attempt, and I don't know if we have a bigger demand, maybe we go look for more money and ask for, or come back and ask for more money on the topic. There's over 600 kilometers of road across East Hants, not just, that's like total kilometers, spread out over provincial, municipal, roots and trunks, residential roads. It's a lot of roads. So it's just hard to say what the uptake will be. I don't have a good sense for it. And it'll, my perspective would be that this will be triggered a bit by an initial push because it's something new, and then it'll come up periodically based on an event. So I expect there to be a big surge because it's an early offering. But then after that first surge, it'll probably be triggered by someone experienced something. What do we do? So beyond that first surge, it's going to be very hard to predict what the demand will be. Not knowing, that's projecting out a perspective based on we've never done this before. So it's an unknown.
Okay. My other thing is, I think we should not leave it to the resident to ask for it. We should dedicate for each road so many signs for, like, staff get control of it, like where it goes, because we don't want to leave somebody, like if you put it out, it's going to go probably 5 on this road and none left for the other road. So we should be in control of where it's go.
Through you, Mr. Chair, or through you, Madam Chair, it gets into the complexity of what we're looking to do as well. We would use some judgment on and talk to a resident if there was 20 signs. Like, we wouldn't recommend someone put up a sign on their front lawn if there's 20 houses in a row with the sign, because it's not effective. It's overload. It becomes wallpaper. If everyone has the exact same thing on their front lawn, it's just like everyone having the exact same mailbox. It just blends in.
That's right.
So we would provide perspective saying, hey, there's already a high uptake on your road. Could you wait and let's see where we're at? Like, it would be a dialogue. It wouldn't be a hard decision, yes or no. But also not looking to make this too complex too quick where we just don't know. We don't want to make it too complex and eat up a lot of staff time on something new where we have a lot of other staff commitments on workload. We just recommending an early attempt at a disbursement on this.
Yeah, but I just ask because when Margaret opened it for the resident to get those signs, you could go to Rockwell Drive and could see 20 or 30 signs, and some lawns have 3 signs. That's why I said, like, we should be in control how many signs for each road, because we're not the provincial government and we don't have their budget. So, like, if Councillor Perry has said like 40 in his district, and I think more than 100. Thank you. Oh, another Christmas tree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, councillors, we're hearing loud and clear that this is something you want to do, obviously, and you want to do it this year instead of waiting until next year, which I believe, Jesse, could probably accomplish printing and procurement.
We could flip around the design this afternoon, and upon a council decision on Wednesday next week, we could put an order in on Thursday.
Perfect. So then becomes this question of how do you get the signs out? And we didn't want to have one subdivision with 99 of the 150 signs. That's not really effective. As staff, it's very difficult for us to know without being out in the communities, sort of if you're looking at Krista at the front desk who just started yesterday, people are coming in to get a sign. She doesn't know whose neighbor is who. So if we do this year, I would suggest that we don't have the ability at the staff level to monitor sort of that even distribution throughout your communities, but you certainly do. So we could have a few at the front desk, but we could distribute a set number to each of you So you could prioritize where they go in your community, and you could know where they are and where they're not. So if you're willing to take that part on as counselors, then we can certainly turn this around for this year and really just have it roll out organically. So with no real set rules around it, except for the ones mentioned by Councillor Rhino, we would have something attached to each sign saying, here's how we recommend you install it, here's how we recommend you care for it, please, if it falls down, pick it up, we want our communities to still be beautiful, all that dialogue. But I think if you're willing to sort of take the initial steps, take 25 signs each or whatever it might be, and distribute those in your community, then we can certainly roll this out this year sort of organically and see how it goes.
I think that's a great idea. Is that all, CAO?
Yes.
Councillor Perry again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CAO, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's what I was going to kind of look at. And as I sat here and thought more and heard more of the conversation, if we go with that approach, the number per district, it will definitely give us an appetite as councillors to feel what the need is, because this will be for this fiscal. And then we have next fiscal coming up, and we should be able to get a better idea of exactly what the demand could be come springtime. So I definitely support the idea of it coming to councillors to distribute in their communities and kind of manage on that regard. And then once we kind of know what the demand is going to be, and I do think it's something that will be a 12 to 18 month possible surge, and then over time the demand might not be as great, and you might see the demand will be a replacement sign as weathering and different things take place. So I definitely support the CAO's idea of it coming to councillors for the initial. Also helps get the awareness out a little bit easier. If they're all centralized here up on the Knoll Shore, Mount Uniacke, and many other places, it's a long drive for people to come to get things for something like this. So if it's easier in the community, it's easier to be able to get the message out quicker and address the concerns. So that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rhino.
Yes, I guess my question was gonna be right around, what's HRM doing or whoever, wherever these signs, came from on distribution and so on and so forth. I do like the suggestion by the CAO, so many per council district. The only thing is, I think it should be probably proportional to the amount of residents and the number of subdivisions in the area. Because I don't foresee these, let's be frank. Policing is probably gonna be more apt to be done on routes, on main roads, right? So, I would like, more to see these on the side roads where policing isn't as visible. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm saying where policing is not as visible. And that way, that would probably, put a little smaller limitation on that, right? So that's the way I kind of like to go. But I think that, should be really proportional to the number in your district, and that way, because if we all get 25 signs, like, some may not use them, and some will be clamoring they want more. So just a suggestion out there that you may wish to consider.
Thank you, Councillor Rhino. Warden, you're on.
Thank you. My suggestion would be, and I would go with the 25 signs per district, knowing that some councillors may only have call for 10, but there's nothing to prevent, one of the councillors that has a lot more subdivisions, maybe Councillor Perry, Councillor Garden Cole, someone, or the deputy warden, would say, I have put all my 25 signs out once we're into this, 2 or 3 weeks or a month. Does anyone have any extra signs that they don't feel will be used prior to the next time we look at ordering more? And if I've got 15 signs left in my garage that nobody has asked for, I'm certainly going to, you know, maybe keep 4 or 5 just in case, because now I have a feel for how many. And sure, you know, here's 10 signs that I have extra. I think counselors can work together that way, and knowing that the initial, and at 25 signs each, that's what, 275 or something like that, that we would order to begin with. Might be cheaper to order 300 and have some extras here. But I think just to roll it out and start it, I think generally speaking, we're a pretty cooperative bunch, and I think we could work it out among ourselves. And I would also suggest having a very loose policy that would assist counselors in explaining to members of the public, probably not an issue in my area, but perhaps in areas where there are a lot of subdivisions. If you get 5 residents on one street in a subdivision who all want a sign, and really it only makes sense for there to be one sign there, I think we should have some kind of a loose policy that might just simply say that the signs should be placed, I don't know how you would word it, but spread out to have the best impact, or even something like that. And then the counselor can simply say, our policy says we want to spread these signs across as many streets and as broad an area as possible. There's already one on this street, so for this particular time, you know, there would not be one available at this time, something like that, just so that, you know, folks would understand. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to remind people to slow down a little bit and not be in such a hurry, because it would sure be nice if kids could drive their bicycles on the road again. And I live on a K road. There are 4 houses on my road. When my son was a child, the kids rode their bicycles all around that road. They played, they did everything on there. I wouldn't allow my granddaughter to take a bicycle from the end of my driveway down to my garage on that road. And 90% of the time, it would be fine. She'd be great. But it's that other percent of the time that, and in my particular case, it's ATVs that could come zooming through, and a little child couldn't get out of the way. And that's much better than it was, but it still happens occasionally. But I won't be needing a sign for my road, thanks to the local ATV club. And Councillor Hebb himself has installed a very nice big metal sign on the road reminding people that this is a residential area and please slow down. And you know, so I know that particular group is doing what they can on roads such as mine, and there would be really little benefit to adding another sign besides what's already there. So anyway, I think it's a good initiative and a great start, and I don't know if we're... I would move that the Infrastructure and Operations Committee recommend that Council approve the design with the realignment of the East Hanson logo as discussed. Purchase the signs up to an amount of 25 per council district, plus perhaps 25 extra to be kept, no? I don't know what the dollar value would be on 25. $7,500. Up to an upset amount of $7,500. Purchase signs up to $7,500. Allocate 25 per district, with councils to be responsible for the distribution of signs, and that this be done as soon as possible.
Second.
CEO, you want to still speak, or?
Through Mr. Chairman, I was going to suggest 5,000, but 7,500 is fine. And I think what I would probably do, based on Councillor Rhino's comments of sort of proportional distribution, if you do a minimum of 25, and then we can do some math on what some of the, you know, if you have 900 homes in your district, you may want more than 25 if you have lots of subdivisions. So we'll take a look at the different districts, minimum of 25, and we'll see how much we can get for the 7,500, and we'll use our judgment. If it's too much, we won't spend that much, obviously. But the intent of council is that 25, and you can sort of spread them around as you see fit.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, we have a motion and we have a seconder. We gotta go to, any question on the motion?
Question, Councilor Rhino wants to speak.
Oh. Sorry, Councilor.
Sorry. Yes, Mr. Chair. I guess, what are we going with? Councillor Hebb come up with, I feel, was a good suggestion on the yellow sign. Some of the warden, I guess, has a different view on that. I would just like to be able to, make the most visible as possible. So, be cost effective too. So, I don't know, I'll leave it to staff to find out, which is more visible, the yellow, taking in the cost effect. Because I think that Councillor Head come up with an excellent suggestion there. And then wouldn't just, like with the white on black, I can understand, but with the white too, might blend in with a lot of houses, where the bright yellow would definitely stand out more. So anyway, I just like to know where we want to go with that. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, a staff suggestion would be to keep the black lettering on white background for this round. It can always be changed in the future. From a transportation signage stance, there's good studies on visibility. The number one most visible combination is the black lettering on white, followed in second place by yellow. That's why you see it in the transportation industry, or because those are the two most visible color combinations. So you're going to win on either scenario. Just suggesting, from an experience stance, I've seen these and they're very effective. Driving through areas that have these specific signage, they pop right out. It's something we can switch in the future seamlessly on future orders if we got to that point or wanted to change it up.
I guess where I was going with it was where Councillor Hibb was going with it. Yellow is equated with school zones, and so that was my thought on that there. So anyway, no, I'll leave it to staff, and I guess is what you're going to go with. Thank you.
Is that all, Councillor? Well, be ready. We have now red signs, we have black and white, and we might have blue in the future. Warden, you want to speak to?
Just to clarify, as the mover of the motion, I would be intending for at least this first batch of signs to be black on white. Certainly room to change, as rest of the councillors have mentioned and as the director has said, if we wanted to in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. We go to the vote.
Question.
Oh, question being called. All. Somebody didn't vote. Still missing one vote, guys. Oh, okay. So the motion passed and unanimously. I forgot about John. Okay, our next item is flyer litter mitigation option report with Andrea.
Morning, everyone. So today I'm here to talk about flyer litter mitigation options. So staff were asked to look at research options to mitigate flyer litter. It's obviously a very divisive discussion. We have residents who love their flyers, and we have residents who hate the litter that they cause when they're sitting around and they're not picked up right away. So in Nova Scotia, the majority of flyers are actually delivered through Chronicle Herald Saltwire. The company subcontracts the distribution of flyers on their behalf, and then the contracts with the subcontractors specify performance criteria. Most of the public wouldn't know that, and of course then we're left with this issue of flyer litter. So other major municipalities are starting to address flyers through bylaws, and right now Halifax has put a bylaw in. It's fairly new, still lots of learnings to come. So it may be an opportunity for us to monitor their success and learnings from their bylaw. At the same time, we can certainly educate our public on who runs the flyer program, how the public can act on their own behalf to manage complaints that they may have with regards to flyer delivery issues and litter that it's causing. So at this time, staff are recommending to council for our work plan that our solid waste programming focus on flyer delivery, education, and to continue to monitor the approaches using by other municipalities. And then there's a great deal of information in the report, so happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We have Warden Ralston.
Thank you. I think I'm the one that made the motion to do this. Doesn't work when folks call the folks that deliver their flyers. When you do get to talk to someone, they tell you what you want to hear and that they will speak to the carrier, and then nothing happens. And part of the problem is it is hard to get carriers for what they pay. And I'm going to tell you, the Sobeys of the world and the superstores and all of these other companies, it's not cheap for these flyers to be produced and delivered. And for what these companies are paying, then, you know, they need to budget a little more to get them delivered effectively, in my opinion. Now, I live on a dirt road off of Highway 14. There are 4 homes in my road. Local guy, nice guy that delivers them. Right now, he's allowed to just toss them. He doesn't even come in my road. He throws 1 pack of flyers in the end of the road. I like to get my flyers. I guess nobody else cares because I generally get the flyers. So I'm one of those people that really likes to get the flyers. But I don't like to see them laying around in the end of driveways and in the ditches when people don't pick them up. And I just still really believe that these folks who are delivering and these companies, now mine comes from Valley Flyer Distribution or something. Now, are they working for Saltwire or are they separate? I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's quite convoluted when you start digging into where it starts and where it flows through, for sure. Yeah.
Because I've called them about issues different times. So, you know what? I think the flyers should be, where possible, in a mailbox. And they used to be where there were mailboxes. But I think most of the time now, if you've got a mailbox, doesn't matter. They still throw them in the end of your driveway. They should be in a mailbox, in a paper tube, or on your doorstep. And I do not think that I'm not allowed to drive along the road in my car and throw out flyers advertising my yard sale at the end of people's driveways. I'm not allowed to drive in my car and throw out flyers advertising a fire department function in the end of people's driveways. This is a for-profit business, this flyer thing, and I don't think that they should be allowed to drive along and throw this stuff in people's driveways. I just don't. So I don't favor this option. I think when I brought this forward, I wanted to look more closely at what HRM's particular bylaw looked like and see if it would work in East Hants, and if it would, have something similar. If it wouldn't, what would we have to add to it to make it work for East Hants? Then educate Saltwire, all of the delivery folks of the flyers that this is the bylaw, and if you don't comply with it, you're gonna be fine. Now, in my area, there is a box next to the community mailbox, and those folks, well, I guess everybody's got a driveway of some type, but there are a certain amount of flyer packages left in that box every week. So if you want flyers and you don't have them at the end of your driveway, you have the opportunity to pick up a package when you get your mail on Thursday morning or Wednesday late afternoon. So I guess those are my comments. I don't mind starting with some education, but I think we have to have something to educate these flyer companies about. You know, if we just say, you know, we really don't like you throwing them around the countryside like you are, that doesn't have any teeth. But if we say, you realize there is a bylaw in East Hants that says these have to be delivered in a certain manner, we expect you to make sure your delivery people follow that. And maybe they'll have to start paying them more than 19 cents a bundle. I don't know how anybody can deliver flyers in the rural area for 19 cents a bundle, given the price of gas and the time that it takes to deliver them. And I realize that having stricter rules on where you can put them would increase the time required to deliver them. But I think they have to pay more than 19 cents. So, and those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Councilor Gardner-Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, you refer to the new bylaw in Halifax. Is there any details on what that is?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly provide it to you. So they do have a bylaw related to flyer litter. So what I would say is that in the discussion that we had, and within the report, there's very clear requirements for the contractor. So a lot of the things that the warden had mentioned, those are things that the delivery staff aren't allowed to do. But again, getting 19 cents to deliver something, there's not really much incentive to follow all of those items. So Halifax opted to put in a bylaw to say you have to do it.
A bylaw to the companies that are
gives
putting
them-
out the flyers? Or?
Yeah, it gives them the authority that if they wanted to issue them a fine, that they could go through that process. Yeah.
I see, okay. So I know someone who delivers the flyers. I know that they are only required to throw them in the driveway, so this would be, you know, an issue of what they're required to do versus what people would like them to do. They have a whole list of, so if people don't want flyers, they contact Saltwire, they contact the contractor, and it gets written on a list so that they're not delivering them to those driveways. And of course, for people who aren't getting flyers and do want flyers, it's vice versa. At the end of a lot of subdivision roads, there's the boxes put in place and a number, however many bundles put in those boxes. And yeah, that's basically the rules that they have to follow. If people don't want them, they have to write it on a list, make sure they don't get them, and only deliver them to the ends of the driveway. So those are the requirements that they are following at this time. And as I say, and you're not sure what the new bylaw is in Halifax County, but maybe that's they are delivering partially in Hants County and the rest in Halifax County. So interesting to know if there's something that could make residents happier, or maybe residents don't realize that a phone call can get their flyers not being delivered to the end of their driveway anymore. Thank you.
Jesse, you want to weigh on that?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, wanted to comment on the intended approach from staff. So the intended approach is to give us a chance, give us some time to educate. We've had tremendous uptake on our education programs on solid waste. Did not want to dismiss the value of a bylaw. It may be needed, but we haven't proactively tackled this topic in our education program yet. And where we've had such great uptake of our app programs. We've had great success with hauler meetings with Miller Waste on our most recent contract. Like there's tools in place for us to get messaging out there. and build awareness. And from a staff perspective, we'd like to see what we could do as a first step and understand the problem more, which takes time. Not too much time. If we're in the same boat here this next year, maybe we're taking a completely different approach. But that first thought in the conversation is, from a staff perspective, we'd like a chance to try to do the educate first before coming with the bylaw, because as soon as we do that, it's really more about enforcement. That's where we're going to go to. We don't understand the full dynamics of the program yet. We've done a deep dive early on, but there's more to it that we need to understand, the impacts to the folks distributing the flyers, the economics in play, what are the drivers, what's in it for Saltwire. We need to understand that a bit more. I'm just looking for more time, and education and focus on education over the next year gives us that time. And that is the background on the recommended motion.
Thank you, Jesse. Councilor Rhino.
Well, first of all, I really like my flyers, my Kent especially, and Canadian Tire's my favorite. But having said, and Sobeys, Sobeys in the superstore, I just love them. But anyway, it does pose a problem. And when I read this, I thought this must be going to be easy. Just put a sign up saying that, but that's not all the way that does it. You're only paid 19 cents. But fact is, you're going to drive out as many those flyers as you can to make a half decent paycheck. That's the bottom line here, right? There also, you've got problems with them coming at the end of the driveway or end of the roadway, and they're never picked up, and then they find their way into the ditch. And then they find their way into the culverts, which could, offer to block culverts in the wintertime. I think there is a definite problem here, but it's not one easy fix. I realize that. Because you have 4 houses, one end of a road, so you get 4 or 5 flyers there. You got no mailboxes in some places. You got community boxes. It's just a convoluting a mix of things out there. So I don't think there's one easy fix for everything. I do believe that maybe we should start with that, but I think we can't take our eye off the ball. I think we should be looking in to see what the bylaws are set up in other municipalities around Nova Scotia, and look at them and come up with, okay, I think this may work for us, this piece may work for us, but to dismiss a bylaw right away and only stay with education, I'm not in favor of that. I am in favor of, let's go with education, but in the background, we're working on and we're going to explore what other municipalities have in their specific bylaws, review this this time next year or sooner, and then we'll see where we want to go from there. Because, it's an issue with complex issues on the outlying area. Thank you.
That all, Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to add to the way the contracts work with Saltwire is, so when we looked at the bylaw as well, so the way they have it set up is those independents, so the gentleman that's delivering flyers to the warden, for instance, he is responsible. So if we had a bylaw, the bylaw would go, we would be enforcing on him because he's the one. So the way Saltwire has it set up, so we wouldn't necessarily, depending upon how you set it up, you don't necessarily get to go to the big guys. You'd be going to the little guy that's making 19 cents to deliver. So staff would certainly be following up with Saltwire and trying to find out who our people are in our neighborhoods that are doing the delivery to have those conversations, because it very clearly outlines, because we do have a copy of the contract, that they should see and should know what they're responsible for. So we would still do that as part of our education, along with educating our residents. So we just wanted to make sure too, when we look at a bylaw, that we're going after, so maybe they are encouraged to pay people more to deliver flyers and things, to do it the way that it should be done. And so I just wanted to add that note.
That to me would be part of what we look at reviewing bylaws in other jurisdictions. That would just be part and parcel of it. Would be me. And then if we review that, and then we say, yeah, I think a bylaw would be a much better way to deal with this issue, than just education. I think then at that time, we could make that decision. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Warden Roll.
Thank you. I don't pretend to remember the exact wording of my motion, but I'm pretty sure it was to have a look at HRM's bylaw and see what we could do at the time I made the motion. In any case, I don't object to the education, but it's got to be education for not only saltwater. We have to find out, because I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think Valley Flyer Services or whatever, I think they're separate from saltwater. They might be a contractor for saltwater, but I don't think they are. Nobody wants to find the guys that are getting 19 cents a packet for delivering flyers. However, the problem is that it's kind of a contradiction. Apparently there are already policies in place that they're not supposed to be thrown into driveways, but it's kind of almost like it's nudge, nudge, wink, wink. This is what it says you're supposed to do, but you can do this. And I, in the past, have called Valley Flyer Services, and I've said, we have littering laws in this province, but it's gotten me nowhere. And I don't blame the folks delivering the flyers. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. It's a business opportunity to make some money. And so if the time comes that we are going to look at a bylaw, then I think we have to build it in such a way that it's kind of like EPR or whatever. We go after the guys that are generating these. I mean, I know, I go back to liability things. When we used to do sleigh rides for the fire department, we did them for years, very, very happy knowing the fire department had event insurance, so we were covered. Until the risk guy said, well, yeah, the fire department may have that, but if somebody gets hurt, they'll be named in a lawsuit. You'll be named in a lawsuit. Everybody that has any relationship to the event will be named in a lawsuit, probably including the municipality. That ended the sleigh rides for the fire department there. So I'm thinking we could build something in that would not limit us to charging the delivery folks that are contracting this, but that our intent would be, because I do believe that, we'll use Saltwire for an example. If they have standards that their subcontractors are supposed to meet, there is an onus, in my opinion, on Saltwire to make sure they're meeting those standards. So I think we would have the ability to enforce on the big guys, so to speak. So I don't object to starting with education with them. I agree with Councillor Rhino that when we have the conversation with the larger guys, that we tell them we are actively pursuing the establishment of a bylaw, and that, we really want to get this a happy medium, so I can have my flyers, so they're not plowed into the ditch by the snowplow before I have opportunity to go out and pick them up. So I guess those are the conundrums that we face. So I have no objection to the education part and to trying that, with the understanding it's not just going to be saltwater. Mm-hmm. And that I think we come back here, I don't know how long it would take to get the education program, but I'd be thinking we'd come back here in 6 months. Mm-hmm.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I would recommend we reassess in July from just in the background, knowing staffing availability and support. It would be an optimum time for us to come back with, here's our education, here's our impact, and if we've seen some issues, we'd be dialoguing with individual councillors. We may go further with just an update and maybe explore a bylaw at that time. But July would be my recommended timing on reassessment for helping with staff manage some other workload items.
That's fine with me, so if we could see the recommended motion. I would move that Executive Committee recommend that Council accept the flyer delivery education be added to the Solid Waste Division work plan for the rest of this fiscal and next fiscal, while also monitoring different approaches being used by other municipalities, with the caveat that the larger flyer distributors are made aware that we are actively considering establishing a bylaw, and that a report be brought back to council in July of 2022.
Second. Okay, moved and second. Councilor Perry.
Thank you. I'm full support of the motion. I think having that report come in July, the question I have, how soon would the education piece start? Either being distributed on the app, social media, or going out. When would that process start?
Through Mr. Chair, it depends. We've got to get through some budget cycles on drafting budgets as a priority and some contracts, but we would try to work it in as soon as possible. It would start ideally it would be starting this fiscal. I can't give you an exact timeline. This fiscal is absolutely reasonable for a ramp up of education. It's just getting the when. I couldn't give you an exact month at this point.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking of is the largest time of year
Winter.
we actually notice the garbage is in the spring. So the getting plowed in, as the warden said, the driveways and this, I think even if it just started as a social media campaign under communications about letting people know how to get off the list, get on the list. This way here, we can mitigate the amount of unwanted flyers that are going to become trash during the winter cycle and be there in the spring. And inform the public that more is going to come. Kind of like a coming attraction. If you have any questions, you can just do a couple little things via social media before you get into the full-blown education, as other things were done through the solid waste app. I just feel it's important to get that started before winter.
Through Mr. Chair, that level of education can happen very soon.
Okay.
That perspective is perfect because it goes hand in hand with our other communications timing. No different than we gear up for our winter snow clearing messaging. This is kind of part and parcel with that. It's just a complement to it. So we could line something up with a similar timeline and similar mindset, because we're looking for folks to be diligent so they don't get buried, so they don't get clogged up. That's a quicker turnaround for a broader education program. That's where my head was.
Yeah.
Initial efforts, that's a much quicker turnaround. It would be lined up with our winter messaging that's usually out in November.
Excellent. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Perry.
Question.
We have more word than you want us to the motion. Okay.
Just certainly, happy to roll out that type of thing earlier while we're pursuing the other. I would just caution it's perhaps not quite as quick and simple as you want, because in order to roll out that messaging, you're going to have to know where people from specific areas in the municipality will call to stop their flyers, or to request they be put in the mailbox, or whatever. So that's going to take a little bit of research. Those are just my comments. We can't just put the salt wire number out there, because that doesn't work. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Jessica, do we have any approach for people who just have cottages, they get their flyer in the summer, and I think we should try to educate those people to cancel before they leave, because it's gonna stay there all winter.
It's a good comment. We'll add it to considerations.
Thank you. Okay, any question? I need a question on the motion. Question being called. I'll go to the vote. And the motion passes unanimously. I need a motion to adjourn from INO. Move in second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Microphone. Okay. Yeah, Councilor Rhino asked for a break. Anybody want break too? So 15 minutes break. Thank you.
Well, there are actually two left because it was the amendment.